And after a little bit of a prolonged break, we are back with Development Diaries. I am joined today with Mr. AJ Basi. AJ, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Matt. It's good to see you, man.
It
Nice
is
to
it is good to
finally
see you,
kick
and I
in.
look forward to seeing you in the gym soon. Um, for those that don't know, AJ is a current professional basketball player. Has been dealing with injuries on and off for the last couple of years. Has professional experience predominantly in England, but has played in Italy and Germany. Any other countries that I'm missing?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Predominantly England as the main one, playing both BBL and NBL one. He's amongst the leaders, I'm sure, at U of M in games played and points and numerous statistical categories. Part of the kind of a golden generation from the for the Bisons there, and has been very involved in the community, working with both in our gym as a mentor and then with the attack program. So lots of different pathways of how he's connected to the city. First question I've asked basically everybody is the first memory that you can think of regarding either basketball specifically or kind of sports in general. What kind of comes to mind?
Um, yeah. Wow. That's we're dating back a long time. My the first memory, like call it kind of just seeing the like the sport, right? Seeing basketball and falling in love with it. Um, it happened before I was even given the opportunity to play. It was just by seeing it, watching it, as a little kid. So I'm originally from Toronto. Like I grew up there since till I was like 8, 9, and then I moved to Winnipeg. So those first couple of years, my intro to basketball was just like my brother and the Raptors, um, and just seeing that and becoming obsessed with it, and wanting to just copy them and do everything that they would do on my driveway. And it wasn't until I moved to Winnipeg, where I started playing when I was like 9, like WNBA and all that. So yeah, like my first memory really is just like watching the Raptors, seeing like Vince Carter and stuff, and then just like falling in love with it and just being on my driveway all day, every day after school.
Do you have do you remember kind of the point, whether that was in middle school or at earlier in your journey, where you started to think like I'm pretty good at this?
Yeah, yeah. So um, the first few years before I was ever like allowed to play or able to play on my own, it would always just be with older people, older guys. Like it was my brother who's 5 years older and all his friends. So I would just be watching all day, spend whatever few minutes I can shooting, playing with them, and then it wasn't until I finally started playing like organized basketball with my own age, kids my own age and stuff, where I realized I was like, oh, like I'm better than all these kids, like I'm better than a lot of them, and like they used to, like I would like see like Allen Iverson highlights, and then I try to like copy that stuff, like playing against these kids and stuff. And I was like, yeah, like I'm better than all of them. Probably like around those first couple of years of playing, and
Right.
I think that positive experience made me like it and love it and dive into it even more.
And then kind of continue the natural progression. There's lots of kids that are good at a young age. At what point was there the switch flipped of, okay, I'm good at this, but I'm going to throw everything I have into this, and like I'm gonna make this my goal. And then what did that look like?
Um, yeah, so I probably would have been in like middle school at this time. So I had like older cousins and mentors, like family friends around me that played. And I would kind of like idolize them and look up to them, because like the NBA on TV is one thing, but then seeing like your older cousin play for the Westman is another thing, right, in person. So um, when I was in middle school, seeing them do that, it kind of that's what made me like take it a lot more seriously because I saw like how much time and effort and energy and everything that goes into it. So I'm able to kind of see that at a young age, and be like, yeah, like I want to do that too. Like I want to do that one day when I'm of that age or whatever.
And then was there kind of a specific, like, where you were a obviously you talked about your older cousin, older brother and whatnot. Was it working out with them? Was it extra practices? What did that kind of look like?
Yeah, so just being lucky to have those those people around and guys around because it's not everyone has that. Um, just like seeing like how much work and stuff really goes into it, um, and breaking down like it's not just going and rolling out the ball and just getting some random shots up, like um, I vividly remember still like it was probably 2, 3 years into like playing. My cousin Dave, who played for the Westmen, took me to like the back of a school once, and he's like, "All right, for the next hour, we're doing only left-hand layups," and it was the one thing that I wasn't good at, and I would miss them or suck, or I don't have the coordination or the strength to do it at a young age, right? Um, so when I was by myself, I would hate it because I was like, why would I want to do that? I keep missing and I look stupid. But he took me there and for like 1 hour, he's like, nope, you're not doing anything but that, you know. And something like that, is like this the vivid memory that I have of like starting to grind at like a
Right,
younger age or just picking something and getting better at it, like with intention, which like I
right.
probably wouldn't have thought of or done really on my own since I don't know how many years we've gone since I would do something like that.
Well, that story is what it triggered for me was we spoke about before you went back overseas after COVID. You know, gyms are shut down. You just have like your backyard hoop, small courtyard, and you spoke about like the fact that yeah, it was half an hour. I'm shooting left-handed floaters for half an hour, and then like your second game back, you drive off a ball screen, you shoot a left floater from the elbow, pull it out in a professional environment. And I remember I sent you the clip just with like the mind blown emoji. Like, what in the world is that?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, that same sort of I guess like willingness to learn and then also apply it. And it's just funny, like in that COVID time, right? Like you're so limited with things that you could do or work on and stuff. And I just found that one thing in my yard, like I don't think my backyard is set up or just the outside elements aren't set up for you to probably work on certain things, especially in that time. But I knew for dang sure, like I can work on my left hand and extend my range. Like everything I can do with my right hand, I'm like I can still do that with my left hand. So I just started with like form shooting with my left hand, and I would just take a step back, step back, step back as soon as it feels comfortable and fluid, and then that just turned into free throw line runners and floaters and elbow and all that.
One's we have the modern example or the very closely the a more relatively close example of the Kyrie game winner earlier this year. Shoots the lefty 18 footer, and right away I think the first thing I said is like, oh, he's that's like something AJ would have done 4 years
That was
ago.
beautiful. I loved it. What a great clip.
You had a bit of a different kind of later development story in some sense because I believe kind of past I don't know what age, but you didn't really play club for your high school career. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I played club basketball quite a bit in like middle school. Um, and then going into high school, I had chosen to kind of stop doing that. Um, Part of it was um, me just wanting to get better and like work on my game. And part of it was just having the right influence, the right person around me, and that was Coach Tacky,
Yep.
where I was going to be going to that high school and working with him for the next 2 to 4 years. Um, and it was kind of just this thing of like, like if you want something different, like if you want to get to somewhere different than maybe the people around you, right? Like you got to do different. You got to change what you're doing if you want like a different result, right? And so for the first number of years, I'm getting better. You're one of the best players your age and this and that. But then comes around things like the CP program or like the provincial team. Um, and in my head, I knew I was always one of the best players my age. And the results would show. We're always having successful teams, winning tournaments, winning leagues, all stars, MVPs, all that. But when it came to those, I wouldn't ever make it. I'd always get cut. You know, and it was that where I was like, man, like I need to something needs to change. So I stopped playing club basketball in like grade 8. I never really did club basketball in high school, and it was more so like let me be kind of selfish in a way of instead of playing like in this like team setting and team
Yep.
scenario, like it's hindering my personal development. you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was just time for me to work on instead of playing games and traveling, playing tournaments. It was just let me just work on my game every single day with somebody who can like guide you, judge
Yep.
you, call you out at the same time, and just see the improvement. Every month, every year.
It's been an ongoing discussion with myself and you guys the older kind of cohort in our group, and then my coaching friends, of the extension of the competitive season
Hmm.
from back in our day where you know everyone was prepping for high school season, and by high school, like, club was used kind of intermittently as kind of tune-ups or getting in shape for, um, and now it's obviously changed, and I don't think it's necessarily serving a lot of players in the best way. So I think what you said about having to take time to be selfish and not and remove yourself from a team aspect. I know for myself personally, that was something that I didn't do nearly enough, and definitely hindered my development. Go and then the result of that. So what I'm hearing is you didn't make 15U provincial team.
Hmm. Yeah.
Did you make 17U?
Yeah. So I got cut from the 15U team, and for the reasons that were stated, they give you like a little evaluation and stuff, right? Um, so I went home and boom, put that up where I would see it out every day. Um, and it was just like a little bit of extra motivation and like a reminder of like prove them wrong, but then
Yep.
also there's things you have to get better at, you know. So yeah, I went from getting cut on the 15U team, saying that like you're just not big enough or good enough to be like a 1-2 for us, to when it came time to 17U, I was the exact same height and I was our starting shooting guard,
Right.
right? So kind of just believing in myself and knowing, working till you're right.
Well, and then to put it in perspective, like what kind of a more of an overview, but like what did kind of your grade 12 stat line look like approximately? And
Um,
take it for granted, because well, how would you, how what would be the measurements that you give yourself?
right. So I wouldn't even know my exact stat line. But it would definitely be like I was in grade 8, I was averaging over 30 points a game.
Right.
Uh, and just doing a better job with playmaking, stuff like
Right.
that. Like little things that coach would be like, hey, like if you want to play at the next level, you got to offer more, you got to do more, you got to expand your game more.
Well,
Um,
the only reason I say that is you as a grade 12 athlete were probably what, 5'9", 5'10", 150 pounds. Is that
on a
being
good day,
generous?
man, you're very generous.
But I mean, the reason I bring that up is at that size, you were still putting up 25 to 30 a game. Like there was at that
Mhm.
size, you have to show something kind of spectacular to even potentially get noticed. And for you getting noticed wasn't walking onto a roster spot. So you're averaging 25 to 30 a game. You're number two in the province, I think you were for your age group, two or
Grade
three.
12, I was third, yeah.
And what did that get you post secondary?
I redshirted at U of M.
Talk
Yeah.
talk to us about that experience.
Um, it was something that I'd never really given a lot of thought to, right? Just like probably any other kid aspiring to play college, university sports. Especially when you're the man in high school, right? You're one of the best players around, you're the best player on your team, and whatever. Um, it was never something I thought of. I always just assumed I'm gonna like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna play university basketball. Um, and as the season winds down and there's not that many offers. There's some interest, right? There's some interest from like in the city, out of town, like other provinces and stuff. But no one believed or was willing to ever offer me a roster spot. It was just basically picking which school I wanted to redshirt at. Um, and in that moment, it's definitely a big hit on your ego. And we had this I had this conversation with Coach Shep, and the one thing that really hit home for me was when he said to me like, "Hey, like you can try to get yourself on a roster, um, and burn a year of eligibility essentially. Like if you're barely scraping onto the roster or trying out for, like, you're probably not going to play. You know, you're probably not playing that year, right? If you can barely make the team." So he's like, if you redshirt that one year, your year that you're saving at like the age of 18, you end up getting it back when you're like 23, 24. You
Yep.
know, how much better are you going to be at the age of 24 than 18? You know, and what I had envisioned for myself down the road, I thought I was going to be way, way better. So it, and fast forward, it just ended up working out that year I saved when I redshirted ended up being like the best year myself and my team and our school had in decades and decades, and that's what led to myself and some of my best friends signing contracts and playing overseas.
How did Kirby cultivate an environment that had um, so many different personalities, a ton of high achievers, guys that had aspirations past the school, past just university basketball, and in your mind, be able to build this cohesive unit that, like you said, achieved things that Manitoba hadn't achieved in years.
Right, yeah. It wasn't like sunshine and roses every year. Like we kind of sucked my first couple of years. Like we weren't a good team, but we were kind of young and had some like talent and skill, right? Uh, um, so for myself personally, like I always knew like I had that goal when I was like in high school. I was like learning about getting a passport and being able to potentially one day play overseas.
Yep.
Through my British passport, through my mom. So I always knew, even like my approach in university was, I was thinking like long term, right? Even in my redshirt year, I was thinking like, what can I do to get to Europe, right? Get to the UK. So that's kind of how I approached it. And some of the guys that came through, we all had like a similar end goal, but everyone's route was a little different, right? Um, so like in comes in like we have Justice, right? One of the best prospects to come out of high school, from our city. So he goes right into like a playing role, right? And then we have like a guy like Keith, right? Like one of the best athletes and decorated basketball players as well in our community. And he comes back after a couple of years off. And so we have all these guys and all this talent now, and then we all know each other. We're pretty similar in age. Um, but like I've seen it in other places, and those personal goals can get in the way of like a team goal, right? And I think what like the best thing that Kirby did, or I think even us ourselves, is like him recruiting the people that he did,
Right.
not just as athletes, but knowing them as people.
Yep.
Because we just meshed and gelled so well. Like it wasn't just like, oh, we're basketball teammates, like we became all like best friends, right? And I think like that kind of like love for each other also pushed like the competitive drive, right? Like we're working together. Like it wasn't just like in my head like, oh man, like I want to play pro after I'm done here at U of M. Like I can't wait to get out of here. It was more so like, hey man, let's get better this summer, right? Like let's put the grind in together, right? Like me, Malik, Justice, whoever else. Let's work out together. Let's get better together. We're gonna ourselves will get better. Our team's gonna get better from this,
Right.
right? And really, if you look at it, like there's you really have to put up insane numbers if you're gonna get a contract after university. If your team's not good,
Yep.
if your team is below 500, you're not a playoff team, or you're a fringe 500 team in Can West or in U Sports, you're probably not getting that many deals unless you're putting up 25, 30 a game. And so that wasn't the case for us. Like one person wasn't going to be putting up those numbers. We all kind of had to do it together. And I think it just worked so well that we all were working towards the same things for a couple of years in a row, that we all kind of elevated ourselves and our team at the same time.
No, that's the working selfishly on your game to benefit the team is, again, touched on it earlier, but such a key component of, again, individual success, but more individual success. Typically, you win basketball games because you have better players.
100%. And it's funny, like we're talking about this now, and for the last few weeks, um, I've been having this conversation like with some of my nieces and nephews, my cousins, my brother, so on and so forth. Like there's just so much basketball going on year round. The kids don't have a time to just take a step back and evaluate, you know.
Mm.
Um, Now I'm not gonna say like, oh, maybe they're not doing that wherever they are, but I think like when you're just going from team to team to team to team, like tournaments, this, that, like you're never giving yourself a chance to like A, take a break,
Yep.
and B, assess like what you have to get better at and then like address it, you know. You're just constantly in these games and games and games, and yeah, sure you want to play because you think you're going to develop by playing, but like you have to go address those things, like those weaknesses, right? Those things you gotta get better at. There has to be a time for that.
Yep.
And I think finding that balance is so crucial because back in our day, we didn't have all the outlet. We had some stuff that we could, be a part of, but we didn't. I don't think it wasn't nearly as busy as it is now. You
No,
know,
it was summertime was like the guys that made provincial team were doing that, and everybody else was at open gyms. And then maybe, for myself, like Alex would get we have a tournament opportunity in July, like one tournament, no practice leading up
Mhm.
to it, but like, do we want to get some guys together and go play?
Yeah, you have maybe one or two tests, right, to see where you're at, how much you've improved, or what else you need to work on before, school season starts, right? You assess yourself a little bit, right? You put in a lot of work and then you assess yourself. And you put in a lot of work and then you
Right.
assess yourself again. That's basically how I treated my off seasons for high school, university, right? And I think that kind of plays into like that, you mentioned me being a red shirt. Um, I think that same mentality is still like it's still kind of bleeding in where it's like I just want to play, I just want to play, I just want to play to develop. Um, yeah, that might be true, but like a big thing that I see with like dialogue in our basketball community is um, redshirting seems to be like so frowned upon, you
Mhm.
know, and because it's the new route of prep, right? Like there's
Yep.
prep schools and there's just more opportunities. There's more prep schools, right? There's more
Yep.
opportunities for athletes, which I think is great because there's just more kids playing.
Yep.
Kids are better nowadays, right? It's very competitive to get onto a roster. But where I try to play devil's advocate, like there's a few guys that we know that work out with us or that are in the basketball community that, like they want advice or they just want to, go back and forth, And so I like that I have that sort of background of where I can kind of, show the other route,
Yep.
and so I'll ask kids all the time, like, hey man, like, so what are you thinking of doing after grade 12? Like, you're gonna go play D1 or you're gonna go play this? Like, what's your aspiration? And like, how are you planning on getting there, right? Like, is somebody interested? Is somebody not interested, right?
Right.
And so a lot of things, like a big trend I'm seeing is like, people scoff at the idea of redshirting, but they would rather go play like an extra year of high school, right? Prep.
And
And
usually pay for it.
yeah, usually pay for it, whether you're paying for it or not. Um, where I find it interesting is once again, I think the outlet's great. It's just amazing to have that because you need it. Where I try to play the devil's advocate with the athlete would be like, okay, like what are you trying to use this year for? Like, are you a D1 prospect, and will this extra year help you elevate to where you're trying to get to? Like, are you a low major or a mid major, and then you're gonna up a level, right? Now, if there's an athlete who's like, I'm like, okay, like, where are you trying to get to? You're trying to get to U Sports. Okay, cool. Is this extra year of prep? Like, are you already a U Sports red shirt? Right? What's next
Yep.
year going to do for you? Are you going to get onto that team and be contributing, or are you basically just going to be on the bench again? Right? Probably not playing. Right? Like where do you see yourself? Right? And so now I'm seeing a lot of like, I'm like, man, like there's some good players that like, man, if they could just get onto like a university that wants them, even though like if a team's redshirting you, it's not like they don't want you. They want
Yep.
you to be part of the program,
Yep.
right? And
Yeah.
if
If
they
they're
want,
reaching out to you for that
they're
spot,
reaching out
then
to you. They want you to be a part of it. They see you a part of the future,
yep.
right? I find that so much more valuable than if a kid is just gonna go to prep school just to end up at a U Sports level anyways, because looking like I wasn't aware of these things when I was in the moment, but when I can like look back on my experience, I'm like, man, like if I did a prep school I was still just gonna end up at a U Sport school anyways,
Yep.
whether it was U Manitoba or somewhere else. But like what that extra year gave me, like yeah, I the eligibility didn't count. Yes, I didn't play in games, but I definitely developed. I was around older guys, better guys, more experienced guys the whole year, right? Whether I'm doing good in practice or I'm getting my ass kicked, I'm in a better environment. Like
Yep.
why would I go play a grade 13 year with a bunch of kids who also can't make it to where I want to get to? Why wouldn't I just go spend that year with people who are already there, and then with a school and with a coach that wants me, right? You learn the playbook, you build a relationship with the coach, right?
Hmm.
You get comfortable because yeah, you go do that prep school, and then when you go back to university, then it's still your first year there, you're still
Yep.
learning everything, right? Um, like so looking back on it now, I'm like, man, like that redshirt year gave me so much, right? Not just I saved a year, right? It gave me like I knew the playbook. I knew how coach was as a person and I knew how he coached, right? Because that could kind of be intimidating sometimes for a 17, 18-year-old, right?
Yep.
Um, especially Kirby Chef. Shout out to Kirby. But I learned the play style and
Yep.
I was like, okay, how can I fit this into my game, or where can I insert myself, or where do I see myself, right? And I'm spending the year with like Xavier Smith and Joan R, Curtis, Kevin Oliver, all these guys where I'm like, why would I? Otherwise, I'd be playing against a bunch of 17-year-olds who also can't make it. So I'm never I tell the guys that I talk to all the time, like I'm never gonna say no or shut down an option. But I was like, let me just provide you with like my point of view, or the other side of things, right? Because
Yep.
for some kids it makes sense. It's
Yes.
like, yeah, go do it, you're gonna level up.
Yes.
But for some, it might not. And when they see that, or it kind of opens up their eyes a little bit, and then it's like, all right, now you have a better judgment of what you want to do.
That was a very comprehensive, well articulated answer, and it's a tough conversation that I think kids need to continue to be exposed to. Um, Kirby did the recruiting panel with Coach Taki, and one of the things that I thought kind of summarizes the kind of the whole talk on the recruiting and development side of things is one, the number one way you get recruited is get better at basketball, and two, go where you wanted. So if a coach wants you, like don't, in some sense, you don't want to. If you have people that want you, don't go looking elsewhere for that program that's better or whatnot. Like go where you wanted, go where you're in a long term uh, plan, and yeah, I think that was very well said. We're about to run out of time here, AJ. Thank you for hopping on. Thank you for giving insight, and I look forward to seeing you in the gym real soon.
Of course, man. You know what? I'm gonna catch you there next week.
Let's go.
All right, see you, buddy.